Once out of prison, Thomas 15X rapidly rose through the ranks, earning the respect of his brothers as a lieutenant at Mosque No. 7, which was led by Malcolm X.
You were transformed from the inside out, as you admit, but you also say that you maintained your sense of discipline and you became an enforcer. Is that right? Tell me about that.
Well, they say enforcer. I like to say lieutenant.
A lieutenant? I
Yeah, enforcer, I don't know, it just seems to have that underworld.
But did you crack a few heads if you had to?
Oh yeah, we did that. It was a very inflamed atmosphere. At that time, cracking heads was part of the program.
Part of being a lieutenant was also taking care of Malcolm X and his family.
My affiliation was, when he came into the mosque, I had to make sure he had a parking space. And I had to make sure that his family received enough food to last for a month. We had a supermarket in Brooklyn, Shabazz Supermarket. And
you would deliver food to him?
Yeah, me and other brothers, you know, to last for a month.
What was your opinion of Malcolm X?
We love everybody who loves us.
Well, he complained about me, and because I thought so much of him, due to respect, I didn't feel as though I was qualified to hold conversation with him. So he told Captain Joseph one day, he says, I don't like this brother here to be on security with me. He said, Thomas, I don't like. He said, why? He says, I like people around me that talk.
And you never talked?
No, you know, how you doing, how you feel, you know, you want something. But I never held a conversation with him, a lengthy conversation, because of the distance in our caliber.
But you respected him.
Oh, yeah, I had a great deal. That's why I didn't open my mouth. I'm afraid that I'm going to say the wrong thing.
That respect and admiration is what makes the next chapter in Islam's life so amazing. Because he had a reputation as a dedicated enforcer with the fruit of Islam, he says that ultimately put a target on his back. The police picked him up for being the trigger man in the assassination. His Muslim leaders told him not to panic.
Don't put up a fight. Go on down. We know that they got you, you know, and don't worry about it.
And that was the end of you?
That was the end of me.
Did you ever think that sooner or later someone would come forward and say, look, you've got the wrong man?
Oh, of course.
You weren't the one?
I thought the whole nation would come forward. I thought the whole nation would come and say, what are you doing with this man? Why are you locking this man up?
But they never did?
No. Never did. And it didn't dawn on me until 12 years later that I had been set up for a scapegoat.
Were you the perfect scapegoat?
Perfect.
Abdur-Raazaq began to ask his own questions about the assassination. He was there when it happened and says he never saw Khalil Islam in the ballroom, nor did anyone else.
Nobody of the hundreds of people in the Audubon Ballroom, many of whom had been in the Nation of Islam, right? Nobody identified this brother as having been in the Audubon Ballroom. Now that's impossible. There was supposed to be friction between those of us who were in the OAU and the Muslim Mosque and the Nation of Islam, right? That Malcolm had left. Several days later, it's announced that Thomas 15X Johnson, whom we know as Khalil Islam, was picked up for the execution of Malcolm X.
And you knew that he wasn't there because you saw the gunman.
I knew as sure as God made green apples that he was not there, but strange things can happen. So I went to everyone who was in the nation, who had been in the nation, and was now in the Muslim Mosque or the OAAU, and I said, did you see Thomas? No. Did you see Thomas? No. Now Reuben Francis, who was arrested for shooting Talmadge Hayer, must have seen the people who were running out of the Audubon Ballroom, right? He never testified that Thomas was there. Benjamin 2X Goodman, the late Benjamin 2X Goodman, or Benjamin Kareem, was on the rostrum. He knew everyone that was in the nation. He could not identify Thomas as having been there. As a matter of fact, he said he wasn't there.
Not only that, but Khalil Islam has provided us with what he says is the sworn testimony of Benjamin Goodman. These papers confirm that Goodman was a member of the Fruit of Islam and had a close association with Norman 3X Butler, another convicted assassin, and Thomas 15X Johnson, Khalil Islam. In these papers, Goodman says that he was an assistant minister to Malcolm X, and that on that fateful day in the Audubon Ballroom when Malcolm was assassinated, Goodman says he was the one who gave the introductory speech before Malcolm took the podium. He says he introduced Malcolm as a man who would give his life for the people. He says also it was while giving that speech that he scanned the room, and he says he never saw Butler or Johnson, whom he knew well, in the room. But Goodman admits that he had left the ballroom by the time Malcolm actually started speaking and by the time the shots rang out that killed him. Now, according to Goodman's affidavit, over the next several weeks, he was repeatedly questioned by the authorities, the NYPD, even the FBI, about Butler or Johnson's possible involvement in the murder of Malcolm X. And Goodman says he repeatedly and consistently told the authorities that they were not present. And when that wasn't good enough, he says, according to this sworn testimony, Goodman says the authorities tried to convince him to change his story and even threatened him with jail time. But he says he still wouldn't do it. Benjamin Goodman was never called to testify in the criminal trial of either Butler or Johnson.
Later, another gentleman came forward and said that he was the one who knew about this, Talmadge Hare.
Oh, that was much later in the trial.
He came much later, but he finally said that you weren't the one and that he was involved in some others. Is that right?
He said him and 4 others were involved. He gave the names, their addresses, they grew up together. He gave the address where they used to work. All the childhood activity, because they came from the same community. He gave all that up. I have that in my possession.
And what happened after another person comes forward and confesses? What happened to you?
Well, the DA said that he heard too much of the trial, man. You know, now he wants to exonerate this guy. You know, if he did it in the beginning, it might have had a different effect. But the DA played it like that.
22 years behind bars for a crime he says he didn't commit. Today, Islam walks the streets of Harlem unnoticed, despite his infamous place in history. We took him and Abdur-Raazaq back to the Audubon Ballroom, which is now a museum dedicated to the life of Malcolm X. It was a time of shared reflection in the shadows of a giant.
I was very, very disturbed about that slavery period. I read about it, you know, and when I made that transformation in Islam, I saw that as an answer, he served as a liberator for all the things, man, that I was thinking that was negative about the system. And then you see somebody stand up there and speak on the scale that Malcolm was speaking on, and you say, wow, this is the answer. Yeah. I feel I have somebody now to represent me, you know
to
what I mean?
Articulate what you were thinking. Here's a man who stood up and said, so and so and so and so and so, right in the face, right into the eye of the storm.
It's that same kind of defiance that has Khalil Islam fighting here and now, some 43 years later, to restore his name.
I would like to be exonerated. You know how many, I read books where they have me in there with my picture and they have it like if this is the actual fact that this man is the one who did this, is the man that had the shotgun. They say that was the cause of Malcolm's death. That's what's thought. Of course, I want to be exonerated. I don't want people, but I had to learn how to live with that, you know.
Anytime you beg another man to set you free, you will never be free. Freedom is something that you have to do for yourself.
In the end, Khalil Islam tells his story to try and set himself free from the shroud of being a convicted killer.
What's the last thing you want people to know about you?
That I'm a righteous, innocent individual, a real human being. That's the truth. I am.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
Khalil Islam is still fighting to try and have his name cleared, but it is an uphill battle and no one is really listening anymore. He's in poor health now, and he wonders how much longer he can continue to tell his story. But one thing's for sure, he wants you to believe him. Do you? We'll be back with more on the report after this.